Brandon Fugal, the billionaire real estate mogul who purchased Skinwalker Ranch in 2016 and has funded extensive scientific investigation of the property's mysterious phenomena, has maintained a careful public posture throughout his ownership. While appearing on The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch and discussing the investigation in interviews, Brandon has been measured in his statements, revealing information gradually while clearly withholding significant details about discoveries and conclusions reached through years of research. His public communications have followed a consistent pattern, acknowledging that extraordinary phenomena occur at the ranch, emphasizing the scientific rigor of the investigation, and suggesting that findings challenge conventional understanding while stopping short of definitive claims that might seem too extraordinary or controversial. But in a stunning announcement released just moments ago, Brandon Fugal has abandoned that cautious approach and made statements about Skinwalker Ranch that are shocking in their directness and their implications. According to his announcement, Brandon is revealing information that he's been legally and practically prevented from disclosing until now. Information about what's really happening at the ranch, what the investigation has definitively proven, and what the future holds for the property and for public disclosure of its secrets. Brandon Fugal's latest announcement represents either a breakthrough moment in transparency about one of America's most mysterious properties, or a calculated disclosure designed to prepare the public for revelations that will fundamentally challenge our understanding of reality, technology, and humanity's place in the universe. Brandon Fugal begins his announcement by revealing that he's been operating under legal restrictions that have prevented him from fully disclosing what's been discovered at Skinwalker Ranch, restrictions that have now been lifted or that he's decided to violate regardless of consequences. For years, I've been bound by non-disclosure agreements, security clearances, and legal obligations that restricted what I could reveal about Skinwalker Ranch, Brandon stated. These restrictions came from various sources: government agencies, previous ownership agreements, and legal frameworks I agreed to when purchasing the property. The NDAs and security restrictions were particularly constraining regarding specific discoveries, the extent of government involvement in monitoring the ranch, and conclusions reached through scientific analysis that touched on classified programs or national security matters. I couldn't discuss certain findings because they related to classified aerospace research, government programs investigating similar phenomena, or involved technology and capabilities that officials deemed sensitive, Brandon explained. The restrictions have now either expired through passage of time, been waived by the entities that imposed them, or Brandon has decided that public interest in disclosure outweighs his legal obligations. Some restrictions have legitimately ended, Brandon stated. Others, I'm choosing to violate because I believe the public deserves to know the truth, regardless of consequences I might face. The lifting of these restrictions allows Brandon to reveal what he describes as the complete truth about Skinwalker Ranch, information that will shock even longtime followers of the investigation and that fundamentally changes public understanding of what the property represents. Brandon Fugal announces that the multi-year scientific investigation of Skinwalker Ranch has reached definitive conclusions about the phenomena occurring at the property, conclusions based on extensive evidence that removes ambiguity and proves extraordinary claims. The investigation has definitively proven that Skinwalker Ranch is a location where technology and intelligences not of human origin operate regularly, Brandon stated bluntly. This isn't speculation or interpretation of ambiguous evidence. This is scientific fact based on comprehensive data collected over years of rigorous investigation. Brandon reveals that the team has captured clear, unambiguous footage of structured craft exhibiting flight characteristics that violate known physics, documented underground installations showing engineering capabilities far beyond current or historical human technology, and collected physical evidence including materials and artifacts that laboratory analysis confirms are not of terrestrial origin. "We have definitive proof," Brandon stated. "Multiple independent lines of evidence, visual documentation, sensor data, physical materials, and reproducible measurements, all proving that non-human intelligence and technology are present and active at Skinwalker Ranch." The proof includes high-definition video of craft at close range, materials with isotopic signatures indicating extraterrestrial origin, electromagnetic and gravitational measurements showing impossible effects, and documentation of phenomena that demonstrate awareness and intentionality rather than random natural events. "This isn't a few ambiguous lights in the sky," Brandon explained. "This is comprehensive scientific documentation proving that we share this planet with intelligences and technologies far more advanced than human civilization." Brandon's announcement that the investigation has definitively proven these extraordinary claims represents a dramatic departure from the careful ambiguity maintained on the television show. Brandon Fugal reveals complete details about what exists underground at Skinwalker Ranch, information that has been hinted at throughout the show, but never fully disclosed until now. Beneath the Mesa, and extending across much of the ranch property, is a massive artificial underground installation, Brandon announced. Ground-penetrating radar, seismic analysis, and other detection methods have mapped an extensive network of chambers, tunnels, and constructed spaces extending to depths exceeding 1,000 feet. The installation includes at least 200 distinct chambers of various sizes, tunnel networks connecting different sections, vertical shafts providing access between levels, and evidence of technology and systems that remain partially operational. "This isn't a small anomaly or a few caves," Brandon stated. "This is an underground complex comparable in scale to major modern military installations, built with precision and technology that shouldn't exist based on our understanding of ancient or modern engineering." Brandon reveals that the installation predates known human civilization in the Americas by thousands of years based on geological context and dating of materials. The installation is ancient. Conservative estimates suggest it's at least 5,000 years old, possibly much older, Brandon explained. It was built by intelligence possessing capabilities far exceeding what conventional archaeology attributes to ancient peoples. Most significantly, Brandon confirms that portions of the installation remain active, with energy generation continuing, systems apparently operating, and responses to surface activities suggesting awareness and control. "The installation isn't dead ruins," Brandon stated. "Systems are functioning, energy is being generated, and there's clear evidence that the installation responds to our investigation activities as if under intelligent control." Brandon Fugal discloses the extent of government knowledge about Skinwalker Ranch and official involvement in monitoring and influencing the investigation. Involvement that has been far more extensive than previously acknowledged. Government agencies have known about Skinwalker Ranch phenomena for decades, Brandon revealed. They've conducted their own investigations, they monitor the property continuously, and they've actively worked to control what information becomes public about what's happening there. Brandon confirms that multiple federal agencies maintain surveillance of the ranch, that representatives have approached him repeatedly about the investigation, and that pressure has been applied to limit what's disclosed through the television show. "I've been visited by officials from agencies I can't name, who've made clear they're aware of what we're finding, and who've requested, sometimes demanded, that certain information not be disclosed publicly," Brandon stated. The government's interest stems from knowledge that Skinwalker Ranch represents access to non-human technology that could have strategic and scientific value if understood and potentially reverse-engineered. Officials view Skinwalker Ranch as a source of potentially revolutionary technology, Brandon explained. If we could understand how the underground installation operates, how the craft achieve their flight characteristics, or access the materials and systems that exist there, it could provide enormous strategic advantages. Brandon also reveals that some government programs have attempted to access the underground installation independently, that classified research has been conducted on materials collected from the property, and that official agencies have more extensive knowledge about what's at Skinwalker Ranch than they've ever publicly acknowledged. Brandon Fugal explains his decision to make this shocking announcement and to reveal information he's been restricted from disclosing, a decision motivated by multiple factors that have converged to make disclosure both possible and necessary. Several factors have aligned to make this the right moment for full disclosure, Brandon stated. Legal restrictions have ended, circumstances have changed, and I've concluded that continued secrecy serves no legitimate purpose and actually harms humanity's ability to prepare for the reality we're facing. Brandon believes humanity is at an inflection point where disclosure of non-human intelligence and technology can no longer be delayed without serious consequences. We're approaching a moment where the presence of non-human intelligence will become undeniable regardless of official disclosure, Brandon explained. Continuing to hide the truth when it's becoming increasingly obvious only undermines credibility and prevents rational preparation. Brandon has also grown frustrated with government efforts to suppress information and control the narrative about phenomena that occur on his private property. I own Skinwalker Ranch, Brandon stated. What happens there, what we discover, and what we choose to share with the public should be my decision, not subject to government censorship or control based on classification systems designed to hide uncomfortable truths. Personal conviction about the public's right to know has also motivated Brandon. He believes that evidence of non-human intelligence has implications that affect all of humanity, and that such fundamental information shouldn't be controlled by small groups in positions of power. This information belongs to humanity, Brandon argued. Evidence that we're not alone, that advanced civilizations exist, that technology beyond our current capabilities is real. This affects everyone, and shouldn't be hidden by governments or restricted by classifications. Brandon Fugal provides definitive explanation of what the various phenomena documented at Skinwalker Ranch actually are, removing speculation and ambiguity by revealing what the investigation has determined about their nature and origin. The aerial phenomena, the craft, the lights, the objects captured on camera and sensors, are manifestations of technology controlled by non-human intelligence, Brandon stated. They're not misidentified conventional aircraft, not natural phenomena, not human experimental technology. They're proof of intelligences and capabilities far beyond current human development. The underground installation is revealed to be an ancient facility built by this non-human intelligence, serving purposes that include monitoring Earth, conducting research, and possibly extracting resources or materials. The underground complex was built thousands of years ago by the same intelligence responsible for the aerial phenomena, Brandon explained. It's a base, a laboratory, a monitoring station, an installation that allows non-human intelligence to operate on Earth while remaining largely hidden from human awareness. The phenomena's apparent awareness and responsiveness to the investigation team's activities is confirmed as genuine intelligence monitoring human actions and responding deliberately. When we conduct experiments and phenomena respond, when we drill toward the underground installation and encounter resistance or warnings, when equipment fails at crucial moments, these aren't coincidences, Brandon stated. The intelligence is aware of our investigation and is actively managing our access and our discoveries. Brandon confirms that the intelligence has communicated directly with investigators through various means, conveying information about its origins, purposes, and relationship with humanity that challenges conventional historical and religious narratives. The intelligence has communicated, Brandon revealed. The information received challenges fundamental assumptions about human origins, our historical development, and our cosmic context. Brandon Fugal discusses the implications of his revelations for humanity's understanding of our world, our history, and our future, implications that extend far beyond one mysterious property in Utah. Skinwalker Ranch proves that we're not alone, that we've never been alone, and that non-human intelligences have been present on Earth for thousands of years, Brandon stated. That reality requires fundamental reassessment of history, religion, science, and our conception of humanity's place in the universe. The existence of ancient non-human installations suggests that human development has occurred under observation or possibly influence from more advanced civilizations. We need to consider that human history, our technological development, our civilizations, all of it may have occurred with non-human intelligence present and possibly involved, Brandon explained. That changes everything about how we understand ourselves. The presence of technology far beyond human capabilities offers both opportunity and challenge. If understood, it could revolutionize human civilization. If misused, or if humanity isn't ready, it could be destabilizing or dangerous. The technology at Skinwalker Ranch represents potential for enormous advancement or enormous risk, Brandon stated. How humanity responds to this reality will determine our future trajectory. Brandon believes disclosure requires preparation, education, discussion, and gradual adjustment to new reality rather than sudden revelation that could cause panic or societal disruption. We need to prepare people for this reality thoughtfully, Brandon argued. Sudden disclosure without context could be destabilizing, but continued secrecy is no longer tenable. Brandon Fugal concludes his announcement by revealing his plans for Skinwalker Ranch moving forward. Plans that include continued investigation, controlled public disclosure, and potentially opening the property to broader scientific study. The investigation continues, Brandon stated. Now that I can be more transparent about what we're finding, we'll share discoveries more openly while maintaining responsible approach to how information is released. Brandon plans to establish formal scientific collaboration with academic institutions and researchers who can bring additional expertise to studying the phenomena. I'm opening Skinwalker Ranch to qualified scientists who want to study what's happening there, Brandon explained. This should be investigated by the best scientific minds, not restricted to one team or controlled by government secrecy. Plans also include creating public educational programs that prepare people for the reality of non-human intelligence through lectures, documentation, and controlled information release. We'll release information systematically through multiple channels: scientific publications, public presentations, documentary evidence, building comprehensive case that allows people to reach their own conclusions, Brandon stated. Brandon acknowledges that his announcement will attract criticism, skepticism, and possibly official retaliation, but he's committed to transparency regardless of personal consequences. I expect pushback from government agencies, from skeptics, from people whose worldviews are challenged by these revelations, Brandon acknowledged. I accept those consequences because the truth is more important than my comfort. Brandon's final message is both challenge and invitation. Challenge to humanity to confront reality honestly, and invitation to participate in investigation that could reshape human understanding. Skinwalker Ranch proves we live in a universe far stranger and more populated than mainstream narratives acknowledge. Brandon concluded. That reality is now disclosed. What humanity does with that knowledge will define our future. Night vision technology has been a staple of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch since the show's inception, with the team deploying sophisticated thermal imaging cameras, infrared systems, and light amplification devices to capture phenomena that occur primarily during darkness. Viewers have seen countless hours of night vision footage showing mysterious lights, thermal signatures, and anomalous events that occur after sunset, when most of the ranch's dramatic activity manifests. But, according to multiple production sources, there exists night vision footage from Skinwalker Ranch that has never been broadcast, and that the network has deliberately kept from public viewing. Footage that shows phenomena with such clarity, such detail, and such undeniable characteristics that broadcasting it would fundamentally change public perception of what's happening at the property. This isn't footage that was too dark, too blurry, or too ambiguous to use. This is footage that's too clear, too definitive, and too disturbing to show audiences who've been conditioned to expect ambiguous evidence and incremental discoveries. The suppressed night vision footage reportedly shows structured craft at close range, entities or beings moving across the property, and interactions that prove intelligence and intentionality behind the phenomena rather than random natural events. In revelations released just moments ago, individuals who viewed this suppressed footage have disclosed what it shows, when and where it was captured, why the network refuses to broadcast it, and what the footage proves about the true nature of what occurs at Skinwalker Ranch when darkness falls and the cameras switch to night vision mode. What they don't want you to see isn't absent evidence. It's evidence so present and so clear that it can't be dismissed or explained away, making it too dangerous to broadcast to an audience expecting entertainment rather than revelation. The night vision footage that has been suppressed from broadcast was captured using an upgraded camera system installed at Skinwalker Ranch during Season 4, technology that provided dramatically improved image quality compared to previous seasons' equipment. The team upgraded to military-grade night vision and thermal imaging systems, explained a production source. These weren't consumer cameras or typical television production equipment. These were systems used by defense and intelligence agencies for surveillance and reconnaissance, equipment that captured detail and clarity far beyond what previous seasons had achieved. The upgraded system included multiple fixed-position cameras covering the entire ranch property from various angles, mobile units that could be repositioned for specific investigations, thermal imagers with resolution high enough to distinguish facial features, and light amplification systems that could produce near-daylight quality images in complete darkness. The image quality was extraordinary, the source stated. Previous night vision footage had been grainy, lower resolution, showing general shapes and movements, but lacking fine detail. The new system captured detail comparable to daylight photography. You could see textures, read text, distinguish features that previous equipment couldn't resolve. The upgraded cameras were positioned strategically across the ranch property, covering the triangle area where aerial phenomena frequently occur, monitoring the Mesa and underground anomaly locations, watching access roads and perimeter areas, and creating overlapping coverage that eliminated blind spots. The coverage was comprehensive, the source explained. No matter where on the property something happened, multiple cameras would capture it from different angles. And the quality meant that anything captured would be documented in unprecedented detail. The system was activated in late Season 4 and immediately began capturing footage that was qualitatively different from previous seasons, clearer, more detailed, and showing phenomena with characteristics that couldn't be dismissed as camera artifacts, misidentified aircraft, or ambiguous natural events. From the first night the system was operational, it captured footage that made everyone realize we were seeing Skinwalker Ranch phenomena in completely new detail, the source revealed. What had been distant lights or unclear thermal signatures were now clearly structured objects. What had been ambiguous movements were now clearly visible entities. The most significant suppressed footage shows structured craft appearing above Skinwalker Ranch and descending to altitudes low enough that the upgraded cameras captured extraordinary detail of their construction, surface features, and flight characteristics. Multiple nights of footage show craft, and I use that term deliberately because they're clearly manufactured vehicles, appearing above the ranch and maneuvering at altitudes from 50 to 500 feet, the source explained. At those ranges, with the upgraded cameras, you can see structural details clearly. The craft appear in various configurations, some triangular, others disc-shaped, a few showing elongated or cylindrical forms. All share characteristics of obvious artificial construction with defined edges and surfaces, visible structural features and components, surface patterns or markings, and flight characteristics that defy conventional aerodynamics. The triangular craft are particularly striking, the source stated. You can see they're solid objects with defined edges, with surface features that look like panels or components, with what appear to be lights or illuminated sections at the vertices and sometimes along the edges. The disc-shaped objects show similar detail. The footage captures them rotating, showing their full profile from edge-on to face-on views, revealing thickness, surface texture, and apparent technological features. One sequence shows a disc rotating as it hovers, the source described. You can see it's not thin like a dinner plate. It has thickness, maybe 15 to 20% of its diameter. The surface isn't smooth. There are features, variations, what look like access panels or components. This is clearly manufactured technology. Most dramatically, some footage captures craft descending very close to the ground, within 50 feet or less, providing views that show detail comparable to examining an aircraft at close range. There's footage of a craft hovering maybe 40 feet above the ground near the triangle area, the source revealed. At that range, and with that camera quality, you can see surface details, textures, seams where sections join, what look like symbols or markings on the exterior. You can see that this is engineered technology, not natural phenomena or misidentified conventional aircraft. The flight characteristics captured in detail further prove the craft's extraordinary nature. The footage shows instantaneous acceleration from hovering to high speed with no transition period. Right-angle direction changes without slowing or banking, and rotation or movement that violates known aerodynamic principles. Beyond the aerial craft, the suppressed night vision footage also captures figures or entities moving across Skinwalker Ranch on foot. Beings that appear humanoid in general form, but that show characteristics suggesting they're not human. Multiple nights of footage show figures walking across the property, moving between locations, apparently conducting activities or investigations of their own, the source explained. These aren't ranch personnel, aren't trespassers, aren't animals misidentified. These are entities that show clear bipedal humanoid form, but with characteristics that aren't quite human. The figures appear in various locations across the ranch, near the drilling sites and investigation areas, around the Mesa and underground anomaly locations, along the fence lines and perimeter areas, and occasionally very close to buildings or equipment. The figures seem to be monitoring the team's activities, the source stated. They appear near areas where investigations have been conducted, as if examining what the team has been doing. Sometimes they're captured on camera, while the human team is present elsewhere, suggesting the entities are investigating the ranch independently. The upgraded cameras captured enough detail to see that while the figures are generally humanoid, 2 legs, 2 arms, upright posture, they show proportions and characteristics that differ from normal humans. Height estimates range from 6 to 8 feet tall, builds that appear exceptionally thin or elongated, and movement characteristics that don't match typical human gait. The proportions are off, the source explained. The limbs seem longer relative to the torso than human proportions. The way they move is fluid, but somehow wrong. The stride length, the arm movements, the overall biomechanics don't quite match human movement patterns. Most disturbing is footage that captured these entities interacting with ranch equipment or structures. In several sequences, figures are shown approaching cameras, examining drilling equipment, or touching structures as if investigating them. There's footage of one of these entities approaching a camera and apparently examining it, the source revealed. It comes right up close enough that facial features would be visible if it were human. But the face captured in the thermal and night vision footage shows features that aren't human, proportions that are wrong, eyes that are too large or positioned differently, overall appearance that's clearly not a person. The entities also demonstrate awareness of the cameras and apparently deliberate avoidance behavior, suggesting intelligence and intentionality. Some of the most intriguing suppressed footage shows phenomena occurring at ground level near the Mesa and other locations where underground anomalies have been detected. Imagery suggesting that whatever exists underground is active and occasionally manifests at the surface. Footage captured near the Mesa shows lights or luminosity emerging from the ground, the source explained. Not reflected light or illumination from external sources. Light emanating from underground, visible through cracks in rock or in areas where ground-penetrating radar has detected voids. The underground lights appear in colors, blues, greens, and sometimes reddish or orange hues that vary in intensity and that seem to pulse or fluctuate rather than remaining constant. The lights aren't steady. They pulse, they vary in brightness, they change colors, the source stated. The patterns suggest something intentional rather than natural geological luminescence. There's structure to the variations, almost like the lights are communicating or operating in coordinated patterns. Thermal imaging captured during these light manifestations shows heat signatures emerging from underground locations, warm air or emissions venting from below the surface in patterns that correlate with the visible light phenomena. When the lights are active, thermal cameras detect heat plumes rising from the same locations, the source explained. Whatever is generating the light is also generating heat, suggesting active processes or technology operating underground. Most dramatically, some footage captures what appear to be objects or entities emerging from underground locations. Thermal signatures show heat-generating forms rising from ground level, moving across the surface, then disappearing back underground. There's footage that shows something emerging from near the Mesa, moving across the surface for a short distance, then descending back underground at a different location, the source revealed. The thermal signature suggests a physical object generating heat, roughly humanoid in form, that apparently has access to underground spaces and can move between surface and subsurface at will. Ground disturbances have also been captured, soil moving, rocks shifting, or depressions forming that occur without visible cause, suggesting activity from underground affecting the surface. Footage shows areas where the ground physically moves. Soil bulges upward, then settles, as if something underneath pushed up against it, the source stated. This happens in locations where GPR has detected voids or structures underground. Perhaps the most significant aspect of the suppressed night vision footage involves sequences that appear to show deliberate communication attempts from the entities or intelligence operating at Skinwalker Ranch. Interactions suggesting awareness of the cameras and intentional efforts to convey information. Some footage shows patterns that can only be interpreted as communication attempts, the source explained. Light displays that show structure and repetition, movements that appear choreographed or deliberate, and arrangements that suggest intentional signaling rather than random activity. In several sequences, aerial objects perform maneuvers that create geometric patterns, triangles, circles, or more complex formations that appear too precise and too regular to be coincidental. There's footage of 3 objects flying in precise formation, maintaining exact spacing, executing synchronized maneuvers, the source stated. They form a perfect triangle, hold it for extended period, then shift to a linear formation, then return to triangle. The precision and coordination suggest this is deliberate display rather than random flight. Light patterns also show characteristics of structured communication. Sequences of flashes or pulses occur in patterns that suggest coding or signaling. Regular intervals, variations in duration or intensity, and repetitions that imply information content. Some light displays show patterns that look like they could be coded messages, the source explained. Pulses of specific duration, specific intervals between pulses, repeated sequences, characteristics you'd expect from deliberate communication rather than random blinking. The ground-based entities also exhibit behaviors suggesting communication attempts, gestures or movements that appear directed toward cameras, arrangements of objects or materials in patterns, and behaviors that seem designed to attract attention or convey meaning. Footage shows one of the entities approaching a camera and making specific gestures, hand or arm movements that seem deliberate, almost like it's trying to communicate through sign language, the source revealed. The movements are repetitive, systematic, suggesting intentional signaling. Most intriguingly, some footage captured during these apparent communication attempts shows anomalies in the video or audio data, patterns embedded in the electronic signals that, when analyzed, show characteristics of digital information encoding. Technical analysis of footage from communication attempt sequences detected structured data in the video signal, the source stated. Not just the visual content, but embedded in the electronic signal itself, as if whatever is communicating has figured out how to encode information directly into the digital video stream. Despite the extraordinary nature of the suppressed night vision footage and its potential to be the most compelling content ever captured at Skinwalker Ranch, History Channel has made the deliberate decision never to broadcast it. A decision based on multiple factors that converged to make showing this footage impossible. The network's decision involves legal concerns, government pressure, and fear of the footage's impact on viewers, explained a network insider. Multiple departments and external consultants reviewed the footage and concluded it couldn't be shown under any circumstances. The first concern is that the footage is too definitive. Unlike typical paranormal television evidence that maintains plausible deniability, viewers can believe it's real or dismiss it as misidentified natural phenomena. This footage shows structured craft and entities with such clarity that it removes ambiguity. The footage doesn't allow for skeptical dismissal, the insider explained. It's not distant lights that could be aircraft or satellites. It's not blurry shapes that could be animals or people. This is clear imagery of craft and entities that are obviously not conventional. Broadcasting it would force viewers to either accept extraordinary claims or believe the show is fabricating evidence. The second concern involves government pressure. Federal agencies aware of what the footage shows have indicated that broadcasting it would be problematic for national security reasons and have suggested legal action could be pursued if it were aired. Government liaisons made clear that they consider this footage sensitive, the insider stated. While they can't legally prevent a private network from broadcasting material captured on private property, they've indicated they would pursue legal challenges and that there could be consequences for the network if this aired. The third concern is advertiser response. Major advertisers have indicated they wouldn't want their brands associated with content showing definitive proof of non-human craft and entities, fearing controversy, viewer backlash, or association with content that challenges mainstream scientific consensus. Advertisers prefer ambiguity, the insider explained. They're comfortable with mysterious phenomena that viewers can interpret as entertainment. They're not comfortable with definitive evidence that forces controversial conclusions. The fourth concern involves potential panic or societal disruption. Network executives worry that broadcasting footage showing clear evidence of non-human presence could cause public fear, undermine confidence in government institutions, or trigger irrational responses. There's legitimate concern that showing this footage could scare people, the insider stated. Not everyone watching wants definitive proof of aliens or non-human intelligence. Some viewers might react with fear or anxiety that the network would be responsible for creating. The suppression of the clear night vision footage has created significant tensions within the Skinwalker Ranch investigation team, with some members frustrated by the inability to share what they consider the most important evidence ever captured at the property. There's been real conflict within the team about whether to push harder for the footage to be released, the production source explained. Some feel that scientific integrity demands sharing evidence regardless of how controversial. Others understand the practical realities of why it can't be broadcast. Dr. Travis Taylor has reportedly been among the most frustrated by the suppression. As a scientist, his instinct is to document findings and share them with the broader scientific community for analysis and peer review. Suppressing evidence contradicts fundamental scientific principles. Travis feels strongly that evidence should be shared, not hidden, the source stated. He's been vocal internally about his belief that the footage should be made available to scientists, even if it's not broadcast publicly. He sees the suppression as unscientific and counter to the investigation's stated purpose. Brandon Fugal, as property owner and investigation funder, has a more complex position. He wants the evidence to be known, but also understands the legal and practical constraints that make broadcasting it problematic. Brandon is caught between wanting to vindicate his investment in the investigation by showing the extraordinary evidence that's been captured, and understanding that releasing footage that powerful could create consequences: legal action, government intervention, threats to continued investigation, the source explained. Other team members have expressed concerns that suppressing the clearest evidence while broadcasting more ambiguous footage creates a distorted picture that undersells what's actually happening at the ranch. Some team members feel the show creates false impression by only showing ambiguous evidence, the source stated. Viewers think Skinwalker Ranch phenomena are subtle, unclear, open to interpretation. The suppressed footage proves the phenomena are overt, definitive, and undeniable. Hiding that evidence makes the show seem less credible than it actually is. The tension has led to discussions about whether there are alternative ways to share the footage, perhaps through scientific journals, through limited disclosure to credentialed researchers, or through leaking to independent media, though legal constraints and NDAs make such alternatives risky. There's been talk about finding ways to get the footage to scientists or journalists outside normal broadcast channels, the source revealed. But everyone who's seen the footage has signed NDAs, and violating them could result in serious legal consequences. For those who've viewed the suppressed night vision footage from Skinwalker Ranch, the implications are clear and profound. The footage provides definitive proof of claims that have been speculative or controversial in public discourse, but that are demonstrated as fact, by the clear imagery captured by the upgraded cameras. This footage proves several things definitively, stated someone who's reviewed the complete collection of suppressed material. It proves that structured craft of non-human origin operate in Earth's airspace. It proves that entities that aren't human move across Earth's surface. It proves that underground installations or facilities exist that show signs of artificial construction and ongoing activity. And it proves that there's intelligence behind these phenomena that's aware of human observation and that appears to be attempting communication or interaction. The quality and comprehensiveness of the footage remove the ambiguity that characterizes most UFO or paranormal evidence. This isn't grainy footage from a single camera that could be misidentified conventional phenomena. This is high-definition footage from multiple cameras showing close-range detail of craft and entities that obviously aren't conventional. The footage removes reasonable doubt, the source explained. You can't watch this and claim it shows aircraft or satellites. You can't claim the entities are people or animals. The detail is too clear. The characteristics are too obviously non-conventional. The behaviors are too extraordinary to explain through conventional means. The footage also proves that Skinwalker Ranch, specifically, is a location where these phenomena occur with regularity and intensity that exceeds casual observation, suggesting the property has significance to whatever intelligence is manifesting there. The frequency and intensity of phenomena captured in the suppressed footage proves Skinwalker Ranch is a genuine hotspot, the source stated. This isn't a location where something unusual happened once. This is a location where extraordinary phenomena occur regularly, where non-human craft and entities appear frequently, where activity is sustained and ongoing. Most significantly, the footage proves that governments and networks know about these phenomena, have clear documentation of them, and actively choose to suppress rather than disclose evidence that would prove to the public what officials already know privately. The reality is that the suppressed night vision footage from Skinwalker Ranch will likely remain permanently hidden from public view, not because it doesn't exist or because it shows nothing significant, but precisely because it shows too much, too clearly. The footage exists, it's real, and it's extraordinary, the source confirmed. But all the factors that have prevented its broadcast so far, government pressure, network liability concerns, advertiser objections, fears about public reaction, those factors aren't going away. If anything, they get stronger as time passes and as more people become aware of what the footage shows. The most likely scenario is that the footage remains in archives, known to a small group of people but never released to the broader public. It will exist as evidence that proves privately what can't be acknowledged publicly, that non-human intelligence and technology operate on Earth, that Skinwalker Ranch is a location where this occurs with unusual frequency, and that those in positions of authority know these facts but choose to keep them from public awareness. This will probably be one of those secrets that everyone involved knows but can't talk about, the source reflected. Decades from now, when some people involved are no longer bound by NDAs or no longer fear consequences, they might describe what the footage showed, but the footage itself will likely remain suppressed permanently. For those involved in the suppression decision, the justification remains that the footage is too clear, too definitive, and too disturbing to broadcast to an unprepared public. Whether that justification is valid or paternalistic, whether it protects society or denies people information they deserve, remains a question that those who've made the decision must live with. The people who decided to suppress this footage believe they're doing the right thing, the source stated. They believe society isn't ready, that disclosure would cause more harm than good, that maintaining the status quo is preferable to the disruption truth would cause. Whether they're right is a question history will have to judge. What remains certain is that somewhere in archives, there exists night vision footage from Skinwalker Ranch that would answer questions people have asked for decades. Footage that proves definitively that we're not alone, that non-human intelligence operates on Earth, and that the truth about our cosmic context has been known but hidden by those who possess the evidence but lack the courage to share it with humanity. Share it with humanity. Share it with humanity. Skinwalker Ranch has been investigated for decades by researchers willing to confront unexplained phenomena, strange creatures, UFO sightings, and paranormal events that would terrify most people. The investigators who work at the property, including Dr. Travis Taylor, Eric Bard, Bryant Dragon Arnold, and others, have demonstrated remarkable courage and persistence, returning night after night to document phenomena that defy explanation and that have caused physical effects, equipment failures, and experiences that most would find deeply unsettling. These are not people who scare easily. They've witnessed aerial phenomena at close range, experienced time anomalies, been exposed to mysterious radiation, and encountered situations that challenged their understanding of reality. Yet they've continued investigating, driven by scientific curiosity and determination to understand what's happening at the ranch. But according to sources with knowledge of recent events at Skinwalker Ranch, a discovery was made that crossed a line no previous phenomenon had crossed. A find so disturbing, so dangerous, and so fundamentally terrifying that it caused experienced investigators to flee the property immediately and, in some cases, to refuse to return despite years of dedication to the investigation. This wasn't a tactical retreat or temporary evacuation due to immediate danger. This was genuine fear-driven flight from something that shattered the investigators' willingness to continue confronting whatever exists at Skinwalker Ranch. What they discovered that made them flee represents either the most significant finding in the ranch's history or confirmation that some mysteries are too dangerous to pursue. The discovery that made Skinwalker Ranch investigators flee occurred during an underground exploration. An attempt to physically access the cavern system detected beneath the Mesa using ground-penetrating radar and other remote sensing methods. The team had finally created safe access to the underground cavern system through a natural opening that had been enlarged and stabilized, explained a production source. Dr. Travis Taylor and Bryant Arnold volunteered to make the initial descent to document what existed below. The descent began cautiously, with Travis and Dragon equipped with cameras, lights, communication equipment, and various sensors to measure environmental conditions and detect potential hazards. They descended approximately 40 feet through a natural passage before it opened into a larger chamber, the source stated. The initial reports were excited. They'd reached a substantial underground space that appeared to be partially natural and partially modified. For approximately 30 minutes, Travis and Dragon explored the chamber, documenting its characteristics and collecting data. Their communications with the surface team were professional and focused on scientific observations. The early reports described a chamber roughly 50 feet across, with walls showing both natural rock formation and areas that appeared to have been worked or modified, the source explained. They were documenting, measuring, collecting samples, standard exploration procedures. Then, approximately 35 minutes into the exploration, the tone of communications changed dramatically. Travis's voice became urgent, then frightened, and within minutes, both investigators were scrambling to exit the chamber as quickly as possible. The source of the investigators' terror was a discovery made in a recessed area of the underground chamber, a find that Travis Taylor later described as the most disturbing thing he'd encountered in his entire career investigating anomalous phenomena. In an alcove off the main chamber, they found remains, the source revealed. not ancient archaeological remains, but relatively recent human remains in conditions that were deeply disturbing and that suggested the people had died under horrific circumstances. The remains were of multiple individuals, at least 3, possibly more based on what was visible. The bodies showed signs of extreme trauma, unusual positioning, and characteristics that suggested they'd experienced something terrible before death. The condition of the remains was horrifying, the source stated carefully. Without providing graphic details, the bodies showed evidence of trauma that couldn't be easily explained by natural causes or conventional violence. The positioning, the physical condition, the overall scene suggested something had happened to these people that was beyond normal human experience. What made the discovery even more disturbing was evidence suggesting the deaths had occurred relatively recently, within the past few decades, rather than ancient history. Based on clothing remnants, the state of decomposition, and other indicators, Travis estimated the remains were from sometime in the past 20 to 40 years, the source explained. These weren't ancient burials. These were modern people who died in this underground chamber. The implications were immediate and terrifying. If people had died recently in this chamber under disturbing circumstances, the same danger that killed them could still be present. As Dr. Travis Taylor and Bryant Arnold processed what they were seeing, they noticed details about the remains and the surrounding area that suggested what might have caused the deaths, evidence that intensified their fear and urgency to escape. The bodies showed physical damage that Travis couldn't explain through conventional means, the source explained. Injuries that didn't match any normal cause of death. Not violence from weapons, not animal attack, not natural medical events. The positioning of the remains was also unusual. The bodies were arranged in ways suggesting the individuals had been trying to escape or protect themselves from something, huddled together, covering their heads, oriented toward the chamber exit as if they'd been trying to flee. The positioning suggested these people died in terror, trying to get away from something, the source stated. They weren't lying peacefully. They were in defensive postures, grouped together as if seeking protection. Most disturbing was evidence in the chamber itself of what might have caused the deaths. Scorch marks on walls near the bodies, unusual mineral deposits or residues, and damage to rock surfaces that couldn't be explained by natural processes. There were burn patterns on the walls, but not from normal fire, the source explained. The rock showed melting or fusion that would require temperatures far beyond what conventional fire produces. It suggested exposure to extreme energy. As Travis examined these details, he also detected elevated radiation levels in the immediate area of the remains, readings significantly higher than background levels elsewhere in the chamber. The radiation detector started alarming near the bodies, the source revealed. The readings suggested the area had been exposed to significant radiation, possibly enough to be lethal. As the disturbing nature of the discovery became clear, Dr. Travis Taylor and Bryant Arnold realized they might be in immediate danger from whatever had killed the people whose remains they'd found. Travis's communication with the surface became urgent, the source explained. He was saying they needed to get out immediately, that the chamber wasn't safe, that whatever killed these people could still be active. The radiation readings were the primary concern. If the chamber contained radioactive materials, or if radiation emissions were occurring from the underground installation, continued exposure could be deadly. Travis was watching radiation levels increase the longer they stayed in the chamber, the source stated. He realized they were being exposed to potentially dangerous levels and that they needed to evacuate immediately. There was also concern about structural stability. The evidence of extreme heat or energy that had melted rock suggested forces that could compromise the chamber's integrity. If the walls had been exposed to energy intense enough to melt rock, The structural stability was questionable, the source explained. Travis worried the chamber could collapse. Most frightening was the possibility that whatever had generated the deadly conditions might still be present and might respond to their intrusion. Travis feared that their presence might trigger whatever had killed the others, the source revealed. If the underground installation had defensive systems, or if entities responsible for the deaths were still present, the investigators could become the next victims. The combination of evidence suggesting recent deaths under mysterious circumstances, elevated radiation, and unknown active threats convinced Travis and Dragon to abort the exploration immediately and exit as quickly as possible. The ascent from the underground chamber was conducted with urgency bordering on panic, a stark contrast to the careful, methodical descent that had occurred earlier. Travis and Dragon practically ran back to the exit passage, the source explained. You could hear the fear in their voices over the radio. They were climbing as fast as they could, urging each other to move faster, clearly terrified. The surface team, hearing the panic in the communications, prepared to assist with the evacuation and began their own preparations to leave the area. Everyone on the surface could tell something had gone seriously wrong, the source stated. When you hear trained investigators who've confronted countless strange phenomena expressing genuine terror, you know it's serious. Travis and Dragon emerged from the underground passage approximately 8 minutes after beginning their ascent, a climb that had taken 20 minutes during the careful descent. They came out of that opening faster than anyone thought possible, the source explained. They were filthy, scraped up from moving so quickly through the narrow passage, and visibly shaken. The moment they reached the surface, Travis ordered immediate evacuation of the entire area. Travis didn't even pause, the source revealed. He was yelling for everyone to get to vehicles and leave immediately. There was no discussion, no gradual wind-down, just immediate orders to evacuate. Within 15 minutes of Travis and Dragon exiting the underground chamber, the entire investigation team had abandoned the site and were driving away from the Mesa area as quickly as possible. In the hours and days following the panicked evacuation from Skinwalker Ranch, the full impact of what the investigators had experienced became clear. Several team members, including some who'd worked at the ranch for years, declared they would not return. Bryant Dragon Arnold was adamant that he was done with Skinwalker Ranch, the source revealed. He'd been investigating the property for years, had experienced countless strange phenomena, but finding those remains and realizing the danger they'd been in was too much. Dragon described having nightmares about the experience, suffering anxiety when thinking about the ranch, and feeling genuine fear that he'd narrowly escaped becoming another victim of whatever had killed the people in the chamber. Dragon said he couldn't stop thinking about those bodies and imagining what their final moments must have been like, the source explained. He realized he'd been feet away from whatever had killed them, in the same enclosed space, potentially exposed to the same dangers. Other team members who hadn't been underground but who learned what had been found also expressed reluctance to continue working at the ranch. Several people said that knowing there were recent human remains in the underground chamber, people who'd died under mysterious and violent circumstances, fundamentally changed their calculation about acceptable risk, the source stated. Dr. Travis Taylor, while not declaring he'd never return, acknowledged that the discovery had affected him deeply, and that any future underground exploration would require far more extensive safety precautions, if it happened at all. Travis said finding those remains was the most disturbing experience of his career, the source revealed. He's investigated everything from alleged alien encounters to paranormal phenomena, but finding actual human victims was different. Following the discovery and evacuation, the question arose of what should be done about the human remains found in the underground chamber. a question that involved law enforcement, medical examiners, and potentially criminal investigation. Legally, discovery of human remains requires notification of law enforcement, explained a legal consultant familiar with the situation. Even on private property, you can't just leave human remains or fail to report their discovery. Brandon Fugal, as property owner, was required to contact authorities and report the discovery. Law enforcement responded, and the remains became the subject of official investigation. Sheriff's deputies and investigators came to the property, the source stated. They interviewed Travis and Dragon about what they'd seen, documented the location, and began planning how to recover the remains for examination. The recovery was complicated by the location, 40 feet underground in a chamber that had already proven dangerous. Specialized recovery teams with proper protective equipment would be required. Recovering the remains wasn't simple, the legal consultant explained. It required sending trained personnel into the chamber with radiation protection, evidence collection protocols, and safety measures that took weeks to arrange. When the remains were eventually recovered and examined, the medical examiner's findings were reportedly consistent with Travis's observations. The individuals had died under unusual circumstances involving trauma that was difficult to explain conventionally. The official findings noted unusual characteristics of the remains and acknowledged that the cause of death wasn't clearly determined through conventional forensic analysis, the source revealed. The investigation into the deaths remains open, with no definitive conclusions about what happened to the individuals or how they came to be in the underground chamber. The discovery of human remains in the underground chamber at Skinwalker Ranch fundamentally changed the nature of the investigation and forced everyone involved to confront the reality that the phenomena at the property aren't just mysterious, they're genuinely dangerous and have claimed human lives. Before this discovery, Skinwalker Ranch phenomena could be viewed as mysterious, but not necessarily lethal, the source reflected. Strange lights, equipment failures, even physical effects like radiation exposure. These were concerning but felt manageable. Finding actual human victims changed that calculation completely. The discovery proved that whatever exists at Skinwalker Ranch has killed people within recent memory, transforming the investigation from study of unexplained phenomena to exploration of genuinely life-threatening dangers. You can't approach investigation the same way after finding bodies, the source stated. The abstract possibility of danger became concrete reality of people who died, probably horribly, from exposure to whatever is there. For some investigators, the discovery crossed an ethical line about how far to push investigation of phenomena that might be beyond human capability to safely confront. There's a question of whether continuing to investigate something that's proven deadly is responsible or reckless, the source explained. Some feel that finding the limits of human knowledge isn't worth risking additional lives. The discovery that made Skinwalker Ranch investigators flee the property wasn't just another strange phenomenon to document, it was evidence that the ranch's mysteries have human costs and that some investigators aren't willing to risk becoming the next victims of forces they don't understand and can't control. The truth is that Skinwalker Ranch is dangerous, the source concluded. Not dangerous in an abstract way, but concretely, provably dangerous in ways that have killed people. That's the discovery that made experienced investigators flee, and that some won't come back from. The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch has aired dozens of episodes across multiple seasons, documenting Brandon Fugal's team as they investigate the mysterious phenomena occurring on the Utah property. The show has featured dramatic moments, strange lights in the sky, equipment failures, radiation spikes, time anomalies, and encounters with unexplained phenomena that defy conventional explanation. Each season has pushed boundaries, revealing increasingly compelling evidence that something extraordinary is happening at Skinwalker Ranch. But according to multiple sources with direct knowledge of the production, there's one episode that was filmed, fully edited, and approved for broadcast, then suddenly pulled from the schedule at the last minute and permanently banned from ever being released. This isn't an episode that was deemed too boring, or that had technical issues requiring reshoots. This was compelling, dramatic content that executives were initially excited to air, content that was considered some of the most extraordinary footage ever captured at the ranch. The decision to permanently ban the episode came after extensive review by History Channel executives, legal counsel, government consultants, and security experts who all reached the same conclusion. This episode could never be shown to the public under any circumstances. According to sources, the episode documents an investigation and discovery that crossed lines the network wasn't willing to cross, raising national security concerns, capturing phenomena so disturbing that broadcast could cause public panic, and revealing information that powerful interests demanded remain classified. In revelations released just moments ago, individuals involved with the production have disclosed what was filmed during this banned episode, what discovery was made that made it too dangerous to air, and why the decision was made to permanently suppress footage that could have been the most significant episode in the show's history. The banned episode from The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch documented an investigation during Season 4, filming that pushed the team's experiments into territory they'd previously avoided. An aggressive attempt to force direct contact with whatever intelligence or phenomenon operates at the ranch. The team had become frustrated with passive observation and incremental evidence gathering, explained a production source. They decided to conduct an experiment designed to provoke a maximum response, essentially demanding that whatever is at Skinwalker Ranch reveal itself directly. The experiment involved unprecedented coordinated stimulation of the ranch. Powerful lasers were aimed at known hotspots. High-energy radio transmissions were broadcast at frequencies known to correlate with phenomena. Rockets were launched above the triangle area to provoke aerial responses, and simultaneously, the team activated drilling equipment targeting the underground anomaly. The idea was to stimulate the ranch from multiple directions simultaneously, creating conditions that would force a response rather than waiting for phenomena to occur spontaneously, the source explained. The experiment was conducted at night to maximize visibility of any aerial phenomena. Every camera the team possessed was positioned and recording. Thermal imagers, standard video cameras, spectrographic equipment, radiation detectors, and sophisticated sensor arrays, all capturing data simultaneously. They wanted comprehensive documentation of whatever happened, the source stated. Every sensor, every camera, every measurement device was active and recording. Within minutes of beginning the coordinated stimulation, the ranch responded, but the response was far more dramatic and more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming, the source revealed. The phenomena that manifested weren't subtle or ambiguous. They were overt, undeniable, and absolutely terrifying to everyone present. What the cameras captured during the approximately 40 minutes of intense activity that followed would become the banned episode. Footage so extraordinary and so disturbing that network executives determined it could never be shown to the public. The first manifestation captured on camera during the banned episode involved aerial phenomena appearing directly above the ranch in response to the team's stimulation. Phenomena that were not ambiguous lights or thermal signatures, but clearly structured objects exhibiting impossible flight characteristics. Multiple objects appeared in the sky above the ranch, the production source described. These weren't distant lights or unclear shapes. These were clearly visible structured craft exhibiting flight capabilities that defy known physics. The objects appeared suddenly, seeming to materialize from nowhere rather than approaching from a distance. Thermal cameras captured the moment of appearance. The objects simply weren't there in one frame and were present in the next, with no transition period. The thermal footage shows instantaneous appearance, the source explained. One moment the sky is empty, the next frame shows 3 large objects hovering above the ranch. There's no approach trajectory, no acceleration period, just instant presence. The objects exhibited characteristics that the team's aerospace experts, including Dr. Travis Taylor, stated were aerodynamically impossible. They performed maneuvers including instantaneous 90-degree direction changes at what appeared to be supersonic speeds, hovering motionless, then accelerating to extreme velocity in fractions of a second, and moving in formations that suggested coordinated intelligent control. Travis was watching this in real time and kept saying, "That's impossible. That's physically impossible," the source stated. The G-forces from those maneuvers would destroy any known aircraft and kill any occupants. Yet these objects were performing them repeatedly. The objects also responded directly to the team's actions. When lasers were pointed at them, they moved. When radio transmissions changed frequency, the object's behavior changed correspondingly. The objects were clearly reacting to what the team was doing, the source explained. It wasn't random behavior. It was interactive, responsive, demonstrating awareness of the team's actions and deliberate response to them. Most disturbing was what happened when one object descended closer to the ground. As it approached, it became more clearly visible, revealing details of its structure. One object came down to about 500 feet altitude, close enough that visual detail was visible, the source revealed. The cameras captured clear footage showing a structured craft, metallic or reflective surface, geometric shape, visible features that were clearly artificial. This wasn't just lights or ambiguous shapes. This was unambiguous structured craft of unknown origin. During the banned episode, the phenomena escalated beyond visual manifestations to what the team interpreted as an attempted communication from the intelligence controlling the objects, communication that was captured on multiple recording devices and that conveyed specific information. While the objects were visible in the sky, the team's radio equipment began receiving structured signals, the production source explained. These weren't random interference or natural radio phenomena. These were organized transmissions showing characteristics of deliberate communication. The signals contained patterns, repeating sequences, variations suggesting information content, and structure indicating intelligence rather than natural sources. Dr. Travis Taylor immediately recognized the signals as potentially meaningful and began attempting to analyze and decode them. Travis started recording and analyzing the signals in real time, the source stated. He identified mathematical patterns, recognized prime number sequences, and detected what appeared to be structured information rather than random noise. Some team members also reported experiencing what they described as direct mental communication, thoughts or information appearing in their consciousness that they knew weren't their own thoughts. Multiple people reported hearing voices or receiving information mentally, the source revealed. They described it as thoughts being placed in their minds, clear, structured information that they recognized as coming from external source rather than being their own thoughts. The content of both the radio transmissions and the reported mental communications was specific and disturbing. According to those who experienced it, the intelligence identified itself, stated its purposes at the ranch, provided information about human history that challenged conventional understanding, and issued warnings about consequences of continuing aggressive investigation. The communications included specific claims about who or what this intelligence is, why they're at Skinwalker Ranch, what their relationship to humanity has been historically, and warnings that continued provocation would result in consequences, the source explained carefully. The specific content of these communications is part of why the episode was banned. The claims made were so extraordinary and so potentially disruptive that network executives determined they couldn't be broadcast even as alleged communications from unknown sources. What the intelligence claimed about itself and about humanity was so radical and so challenging to established beliefs that broadcasting it, even framed as alleged communications, was deemed too dangerous, the source stated. During the phenomena captured in the banned episode, multiple team members experienced severe physical effects that required medical intervention and that demonstrated the genuine danger of the aggressive investigation approach. Several people collapsed during the event, the production source revealed. They lost consciousness, experienced severe physiological symptoms, and required emergency medical treatment. Dr. Travis Taylor himself was among those seriously affected. He experienced what appeared to be a seizure-like episode, losing consciousness, exhibiting convulsive movements, and requiring immediate medical attention from team members. Travis went down hard, the source stated. One moment he was standing analyzing data. The next, he was on the ground unconscious with his body rigid and shaking. It was terrifying to witness. Other team members experienced severe symptoms, including sudden onset of extreme headaches, described as the worst pain they'd ever experienced, visual disturbances, including temporary blindness or seeing geometric patterns, auditory hallucinations or intense ringing in ears, nausea and vomiting, and difficulty breathing or sensation of pressure on chest. Multiple people were on the ground unable to function, the source explained. The medical personnel on site were overwhelmed trying to treat multiple casualties simultaneously. Emergency medical services were called, and several team members were transported to hospitals. Medical evaluation revealed concerning findings: abnormal brain activity on EEG scans, elevated markers in blood work suggesting physiological stress, and vital signs showing effects consistent with exposure to unknown environmental factors. Hospital doctors couldn't explain what had caused the symptoms based on conventional medical understanding, the source stated. The pattern of effects across multiple people suggested environmental exposure rather than individual medical events, but there was no identifiable environmental factor that would account for the symptoms. Most disturbing was that the symptoms appeared to correlate directly with proximity to the aerial phenomena and with the intensity of the communications. People who were closer to where the objects hovered, or who reported stronger mental communications, experienced more severe physiological effects. There was clear dose-response relationship, the source explained. The closer you were to the phenomena, or the more intensely you experienced the communications, the worse your physical symptoms were. That suggests the phenomena were directly causing the physiological effects. The banned episode's footage includes visual documentation of phenomena that goes far beyond the ambiguous or unclear evidence typically shown on paranormal television. The cameras captured clear, unambiguous imagery that definitively shows objects and events that cannot be explained by conventional understanding. "The footage is extraordinary," stated someone who's viewed the complete episode. "This isn't blurry shapes or distant lights that could be anything. This is high-definition, multi-angle footage of structured craft exhibiting impossible flight characteristics, captured by professional equipment with data corroboration from multiple sensors." The visual footage shows objects that are clearly artificial, geometric shapes with visible surface features, apparently metallic or highly reflective materials, and structured components suggesting complex engineering. The objects are visible against the night sky with stars in background, providing scale and perspective. "You can see these are manufactured objects," the viewer explained. "They have defined edges, surface features, apparent structural components. They're not natural phenomena or misidentified conventional aircraft. They're clearly engineered craft of some kind. The flight characteristics captured on camera are equally definitive. The footage shows maneuvers that multiple aerospace experts have stated violate known physics, accelerations that would require G-forces that would destroy any known material, direction changes without deceleration and re-acceleration that conventional propulsion can't achieve, and hovering capabilities without any visible means of lift or thrust. The footage definitively shows flight capabilities beyond anything human technology can achieve, the viewer stated. There's no ambiguity. These objects are doing things that our aircraft cannot do and that our physics says shouldn't be possible. The cameras also captured the moment when one object appeared to emit some kind of energy beam or field that affected the team. Visible distortion in the air, similar to heat shimmer, emanated from the object toward the ground where team members were standing. You can actually see something being projected from the object toward the team, the viewer explained. The air distorts, there's visible effect like looking through heated air, and immediately people start collapsing. The footage shows direct cause and effect. The object does something, and people are immediately affected. Perhaps most significant is that the footage includes clear images of the objects at close range, close enough that structural details, surface features, and even what appear to be markings or symbols on the object's surfaces are visible. There's footage of one object at close range, close enough to see details of its construction, its surface characteristics, even what look like symbols or markings on its exterior, the viewer revealed. It's the clearest footage of an unidentified craft that's probably ever been captured. Within hours of the incident documented in the banned episode, government personnel arrived at Skinwalker Ranch, a response that was immediate, comprehensive, and that made clear the event had attracted official attention at the highest levels. Government vehicles showed up at the ranch before sunrise, less than 6 hours after the incident, the production source explained. These weren't local authorities responding to emergency calls. These were federal agents, military personnel, and officials from agencies that most people have never heard of. The government personnel immediately secured the site, confiscated recording equipment and data storage devices, and began interrogating team members about what had occurred. The response was organized and professional, suggesting this was not improvised, but rather an established protocol being implemented. They knew exactly what they were doing, the source stated. This wasn't their first time responding to an incident like this. They had procedures, they had authority, and they made very clear that they were in charge and that everyone needed to cooperate fully. All footage and data from the investigation was confiscated under National Security Authority. Team members were required to surrender phones, cameras, computers, and any devices that might contain recordings or data from the incident. Everything that could contain data was confiscated, the source explained. They took memory cards, hard drives, backup systems, even personal phones. They wanted every possible copy of the footage and data. Team members were also required to sign non-disclosure agreements and were warned about severe consequences for discussing the incident publicly. The NDAs were backed by national security classification, making violation a federal crime potentially punishable by imprisonment. The NDAs weren't standard production confidentiality agreements. These were government security NDAs with criminal penalties for violation, the source stated. People were told explicitly that discussing what happened could result in federal prosecution. The government's immediate and comprehensive response made clear that what happened at Skinwalker Ranch that night was considered a national security matter requiring the highest levels of classification and control. The incident wasn't being treated as unexplained phenomena requiring investigation. It was being treated as a security event requiring suppression. The government's reaction told us that what we'd captured wasn't unknown to them, the source noted. They knew what we'd encountered, they had protocols for responding to it, and they were determined to prevent any information from becoming public. Despite the extraordinary nature of the footage, and despite initial excitement about having captured the most compelling evidence ever documented at Skinwalker Ranch, History Channel executives made the decision to permanently ban the episode after reviewing it and consulting with legal counsel and government liaisons. The decision came from the highest levels of the network and its parent company, explained a network insider. Multiple factors converged to make releasing the episode impossible from the network's perspective. The first factor was government pressure. Federal agencies made clear that broadcasting the episode would be considered a national security violation. While the network theoretically has First Amendment protections, the government indicated it would pursue legal action to prevent broadcast. The government threatened injunctions, argued the footage contained classified information, even though it was captured by civilians on private property, and made clear they would use every legal mechanism available to prevent broadcast, the insider explained. The second factor was liability concerns. Legal counsel warned that broadcasting footage showing team members being injured by unknown phenomena could expose the network to lawsuits from injured parties or their families. The lawyers said showing people being physically harmed on camera, even in the context of an investigation they voluntarily participated in, created liability exposure, the insider stated, especially given that the footage shows clear cause and effect. The objects do something, and people are immediately injured. The third factor was concern about public reaction. Executives worried that broadcasting definitive footage of craft exhibiting impossible flight characteristics and appearing to attack humans could cause panic or civil unrest. There were serious discussions about whether showing this footage could cause widespread fear, could destabilize public confidence in government and institutions, could trigger panic buying or other irrational responses, the insider explained. The fourth factor was advertiser concerns. Major advertisers indicated they wouldn't want their brands associated with content this controversial and potentially disturbing. Advertisers don't want to be associated with content that shows people being attacked by UFOs, the insider noted. The commercial implications of lost advertising revenue factored into the decision. Ultimately, the combination of government threats, legal liability, public safety concerns, and commercial considerations made the decision clear. The episode would never air. Despite never being broadcast, the banned episode from The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch represents significant evidence about the phenomena occurring at the property and about the reality of unexplained aerial phenomena more broadly. This episode proves several things definitively, at least for those who've seen the footage, stated the source who viewed it. It proves that structured craft of unknown origin exist and operate in Earth's atmosphere. It proves these craft exhibit capabilities far beyond known human technology. It proves that there's intelligence controlling these craft that can interact with humans. And it proves the government knows about these craft and has established protocols for responding to encounters with them. The quality and comprehensiveness of the documentation distinguishes this episode from typical UFO footage. This isn't grainy video from a single camera showing distant lights. This is high-definition footage from multiple cameras and sensors, showing close-range details of craft, capturing impossible flight maneuvers, documenting responsive behaviors indicating intelligence, and showing direct effects on humans. This is the quality of evidence that UFO researchers have been seeking for decades, the source explained. Multiple cameras, multiple witnesses, sensor data corroboration, clear images showing structural details, documentation of flight characteristics, evidence of interaction and intelligence. It's comprehensive proof of something extraordinary. The episode also proves that aggressive investigation of these phenomena carries real risks. The physical effects experienced by team members demonstrate that these aren't just lights in the sky to be observed from safe distance. These are phenomena that can affect humans physically and potentially dangerously. The footage definitively shows that these phenomena can harm people, the source stated. That's important information that has safety implications for anyone investigating UAPs or related phenomena. Most significantly, the government's response to the incident proves that official agencies know about these phenomena, take them seriously, and actively work to prevent public knowledge of encounters. The immediate government response, the confiscation of evidence, the classification NDAs, the pressure to suppress the episode, all of that proves the government knows these phenomena are real and actively suppresses information about them, the source explained. For those involved in the investigation and those who've seen the footage, the banned episode represents definitive proof that challenges fundamental assumptions about human technology, our place in the universe, and what our government knows but won't disclose. The existence of the banned Skinwalker Ranch episode, comprehensive documentation of extraordinary phenomena that will never be shown publicly, represents both frustration and vindication for those who believe unexplained phenomena deserve serious investigation. It's frustrating that the most compelling evidence ever captured at Skinwalker Ranch will never be seen by the public, reflected the production source. This footage would answer so many questions, would prove definitively that something extraordinary is happening, would advance public understanding of these phenomena. Instead, it sits in a vault, suppressed by government pressure and network liability concerns. However, the episode's existence, even if suppressed, validates the investigation of Skinwalker Ranch and lends credibility to the documented phenomena that have been shown on broadcast episodes. The fact that an episode was filmed, edited, approved for broadcast, then banned at the highest levels, tells you that the Skinwalker Ranch investigation is capturing real, significant phenomena, the source stated. Networks don't ban episodes unless there's genuine reason. Either the content is so dangerous it can't be shown, or it's so extraordinary that powerful interests demand suppression. For the team members who experienced the incident, the banned episode represents both vindication and burden. They know what they experienced, they know it was real and extraordinary, but they're legally prohibited from discussing it publicly. The people who were there that night carry the knowledge of what happened, the source explained. They know they encountered something that proved the reality of non-human intelligence and technology, but they can't talk about it without violating federal NDAs and risking prosecution. The banned episode also raises questions about what other evidence has been suppressed from Skinwalker Ranch investigations over the years. If this episode was deemed too dangerous to air, what else has been captured but hidden? You have to wonder what else has been suppressed, the source noted. How many other incidents have occurred that we don't know about because they were classified or covered up before information could spread? For future seasons of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, the banned episode serves as a warning about the limits of investigation, a reminder that there are boundaries that powerful interests won't allow to be crossed publicly. The team learned that there are limits to how far they can push before encountering forces that will shut them down, the source stated. The banned episode marked a line. Cross that line, and the investigation will be stopped, evidence will be confiscated, and disclosure will be prevented. Ultimately, the banned episode from The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch will likely remain permanently suppressed. Too dangerous to broadcast, too extraordinary to dismiss, existing as evidence known to a small group but hidden from the public that might benefit most from knowing that we're not alone and that the universe contains intelligences and technologies far beyond our current understanding. The episode that will never be released remains as testament to both the reality of unexplained phenomena and the powerful forces determined to keep that reality hidden from humanity. Brandon Fugal has funded years of scientific investigation at Skinwalker Ranch, authorizing drilling operations, excavations, experiments, and deployments of sophisticated technology to understand the mysterious phenomena occurring at the property. Throughout the investigation documented on The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, Brandon has generally supported methodical, scientifically rigorous approaches, preferring careful measurement and documentation over reckless provocation of unknown phenomena. His authorization decisions have followed predictable patterns, approving experiments that advance understanding while maintaining safety protocols, allowing drilling and excavation within reasonable risk parameters, and generally supporting the scientific method applied to paranormal investigation. While willing to push boundaries, Brandon has maintained certain limits about what activities are appropriate or safe at the ranch. But according to sources with direct knowledge of recent developments, Brandon Fugal has authorized the team to undertake an action at Skinwalker Ranch that represents a dramatic departure from previous investigation approaches. An operation so aggressive, so potentially dangerous, and so unprecedented that team members were shocked when Brandon gave his approval. This isn't incremental escalation of existing investigation methods. This is authorization for an operation that crosses lines previously considered inviolable and that commits the team to confronting whatever exists at the ranch in ways that could provoke responses far more intense than anything previously experienced. In revelations released just moments ago, individuals involved with planning this operation have disclosed what Brandon has authorized, why he made this shocking decision, and what the team expects will happen when the operation is executed. Brandon Fugal has authorized the team to physically access the underground installation beneath Skinwalker Ranch, not through narrow drill holes or remote cameras, but through creating a large entry shaft that will allow personnel to descend into the ancient chambers and explore them directly. Brandon has given approval for excavation of a major access shaft to the underground installation, revealed a production source. This isn't drilling a narrow hole. This is creating a passage large enough for people, equipment, and potentially vehicles to enter the underground complex. The decision represents fundamental shift from remote investigation to direct physical exploration. For years, the team has studied the underground anomaly from the surface using GPR, drilling, and sensors. Brandon's authorization commits to actually entering the installation. This is the moment the investigation has been building toward, the source explained. Everything until now has been preparation. This authorization means we're finally going inside to see what's actually there. The access shaft will be excavated using heavy equipment to a depth of approximately 200 feet, where GPR indicates the first major chamber exists. Engineering consultants have designed the shaft with safety features including reinforced walls, ventilation systems, emergency egress capabilities, and structural support to prevent collapse. This won't be a crude hole in the ground, the source stated. This will be engineered access comparable to mine shaft construction, safe, stable, and designed for repeated entry and exit. The authorization shocked team members because of the scale, the commitment of resources, and the recognition that entering the installation could provoke responses from whatever intelligence controls or monitors it. Brandon Fugal's decision to authorize direct access to the underground installation stems from multiple factors that have converged to make this aggressive approach both justified and necessary in his assessment. Brandon has concluded that years of remote investigation have provided enough evidence to justify direct exploration, explained someone close to Brandon's decision-making. We know something extraordinary exists underground. Continuing to study it remotely won't provide the answers that direct access can. The decision is also motivated by frustration with limitations of current investigation methods. Drilling provides minimal information. Cameras lowered through drill holes have limited mobility and visibility, and sensors can only measure certain parameters without providing comprehensive understanding. Brandon believes we've learned as much as we can from surface investigation, the source stated. To truly understand what's underground requires going there, seeing it directly, and conducting hands-on investigation. There's also recognition that whatever intelligence monitors the ranch already knows about the investigation. Years of drilling, excavation, and experiments have clearly attracted attention. Brandon believes that being open about intentions may be preferable to continued indirect probing. If the entities are already aware of our investigation and are monitoring our activities, then being direct about our intentions to access the installation might actually be safer than continuing to probe indirectly, the source explained. Finally, Brandon feels obligation to definitively answer the questions that have driven the investigation. Having invested millions and years of effort, he wants conclusive results rather than endless incremental progress. Brandon wants answers, the source stated. This authorization represents commitment to getting those answers regardless of risks. The operation Brandon Fugal has authorized represents the largest and most ambitious undertaking in Skinwalker Ranch investigation history. An excavation and construction project requiring months of work and resources measured in millions of dollars. The access shaft excavation will require heavy equipment operating for weeks or months, the production source explained. We're talking about moving thousands of cubic yards of earth and rock, installing structural support, and creating infrastructure for safe underground access. The project will involve specialized contractors experienced in mine construction, underground engineering, and hazardous environment work. Standard construction crews aren't qualified for this type of specialized excavation. Brandon is bringing in experts who've built mine shafts, underground research facilities, and similar installations, the source stated. These aren't typical contractors. These are specialists in underground construction in potentially hazardous environments. Safety systems will include continuous air quality monitoring, ventilation to ensure breathable atmosphere, emergency oxygen supplies, redundant lighting systems, communication equipment maintaining contact with surface, and rescue equipment for emergency extraction. Every safety measure used in professional mining and underground research will be implemented, the source explained. Brandon is committed to doing this right, with no shortcuts on safety. The timeline extends over many months, excavation taking 8 to 12 weeks, installation of safety systems and infrastructure another 4 to 6 weeks, then testing and certification before human entry is authorized. This isn't something that happens quickly, the source stated. From authorization to actually entering the installation will take at least 6 months, possibly longer. The scale of the operation reflects Brandon's commitment to comprehensive exploration rather than limited reconnaissance. Team members preparing for the underground access operation have expectations about what they'll encounter based on years of remote investigation. Expectations ranging from archaeological discoveries to confrontation with active technology of unknown origin. The minimum expectation is that we'll find extensive artificial chambers showing evidence of ancient construction, explained Dr. Travis Taylor. GPR and other data clearly show constructed spaces. At minimum, we'll document ancient engineering and possibly artifacts. More optimistic projections anticipate discovering functioning technology, systems that remain operational despite apparent age, energy sources that continue generating power, and possibly interfaces or controls that might allow interaction with the installation's systems. If the electromagnetic signatures and energy emissions we've detected from the surface correlate with active technology underground, we could find operational systems, Travis stated. That would be extraordinary. Technology thousands of years old still functioning. Some team members anticipate encountering evidence of the intelligence responsible for the installation, whether through artifacts, information storage systems, or possibly direct contact. There's possibility that whatever built the installation left information, records, archives, instructions, the source explained. We might find answers about who built this, when, and why. The most dramatic expectation is potential contact with entities that monitor or control the installation. If the underground complex remains active and occupied, direct access could trigger responses. Everyone acknowledges that entering the installation could provoke response from whatever intelligence monitors it, the source stated. That's the biggest unknown. What happens when we actually go inside? By authorizing direct access to the underground installation, Brandon Fugal is accepting risks far greater than any previous investigation activity. Risks to personnel safety, financial exposure, and potentially triggering responses that could endanger everyone involved. The physical risks are substantial, acknowledged the source. Underground excavation always carries dangers: collapse, bad air, getting trapped. Add unknown factors like what exists in the installation, and risk multiplies exponentially. There's risk that the installation contains hazards the team hasn't anticipated: radiation, toxic materials, structural instabilities, or active defense systems that could harm intruders. We're entering an installation built by unknown intelligence for unknown purposes, the source explained. We can't rule out that it has hazards or defenses designed to prevent exactly what we're attempting. Financial risk is also significant. The operation will cost millions, and if it fails to produce results commensurate with the investment, Brandon faces enormous financial loss. Brandon is investing millions in this access operation with no guarantee of return, the source stated. If we get underground and find nothing remarkable, or if we can't safely explore, that's millions spent for minimal benefit. Legal and regulatory risks also exist. Depending on what's found, government agencies could claim jurisdiction, tribal authorities could assert cultural claims, or environmental regulations could be triggered. If we discover certain types of artifacts or resources, various authorities could step in and take control, the source explained. Most significantly, there's risk of provoking hostile response from the intelligence that monitors the ranch. Entering the installation could be perceived as aggressive intrusion, triggering defensive reactions. We don't know how the entities will respond to us actually entering their installation, the source stated. That's the greatest unknown risk. The team is undertaking extensive preparation for the underground access operation, training, planning, and rehearsal designed to maximize safety and success while preparing for various scenarios they might encounter. Team members are receiving training in confined space operations, underground safety, emergency procedures, and equipment use, explained the source. Everyone who might enter the installation is being trained to professional standards. Physical conditioning is also required. Underground exploration in potentially challenging environments requires fitness and stamina that not all team members currently possess. There are physical requirements for safely operating underground, the source stated. Team members are preparing physically to ensure they can handle the demands. Psychological preparation is equally important. Entering an ancient installation of unknown origin in darkness hundreds of feet underground will be mentally challenging. We're working with psychologists to prepare team members for the mental stress of underground exploration in unknown environment, the source explained. This won't be easy psychologically. Equipment testing is ongoing. Every system that will be used underground, lights, communications, sensors, safety equipment, is being tested and retested to ensure reliability. We're testing everything in simulated conditions to identify failures before we're actually underground, the source stated. Contingency planning covers various scenarios. What happens if someone is injured? If communications fail? If structural collapse occurs? If hostile entities are encountered? If the installation proves inaccessible? We're planning for everything we can imagine could go wrong, the source explained. Every scenario gets a response plan, so we're not making critical decisions under stress in the moment. The preparation reflects recognition that this operation is fundamentally more dangerous than anything attempted previously at Skinwalker Ranch. Brandon Fugal has authorized the operation to begin immediately, with excavation of the access shaft commencing as soon as equipment and personnel are in position. Excavation equipment is being mobilized to the ranch now, the source revealed. Within weeks, the heavy excavation will begin. The operation will be documented comprehensively for both scientific record and for broadcast on The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. Multiple camera crews will capture every phase. This will be documented more thoroughly than anything we've done before, the source stated. The excavation, the shaft construction, the first entry, all captured from multiple angles for complete record. Public announcement of the operation will be carefully managed. Brandon wants to inform viewers about the undertaking while avoiding disclosure of specific details that could attract unwanted attention. There's balance between transparency with the audience and operational security, the source explained. We'll share that something major is happening without providing details that could compromise safety or attract interference. Security during the operation will be enhanced. Additional personnel will monitor the property to prevent interference and to protect the excavation site. We can't have curious trespassers or hostile parties disrupting the operation, the source stated. Security will be increased significantly. The team anticipates the operation will dominate the next season of the television show, providing dramatic content as excavation progresses toward the moment of first entry into the underground installation. This operation will define the next phase of Skinwalker Ranch investigation, the source explained. Everything builds toward that moment, when someone first descends into the installation, and we finally see what's actually down there. Brandon Fugal's authorization of direct access to the underground installation represents an inflection point for Skinwalker Ranch investigation, a commitment that will either validate years of effort with extraordinary discoveries or end in failure that could terminate the investigation entirely. This is all in moment, reflected the source. Brandon is committing resources and reputation to this operation. The results will determine whether Skinwalker Ranch investigation continues or ends. Success, discovering functioning ancient technology, making contact with non-human intelligence, or finding definitive proof of extraordinary claims, would vindicate the investigation and potentially revolutionize human understanding. If we find what we hope to find, this becomes the most important archaeological and scientific discovery in history, the source stated. Partial success, confirming ancient construction without finding active technology or entities, would still validate core investigation premises while leaving questions unanswered. Even if we only prove the installation exists and is ancient, that's significant discovery that justifies the effort, the source explained. Failure, finding nothing remarkable, encountering insurmountable obstacles, or triggering responses that make exploration impossible, could end the investigation and leave Skinwalker Ranch mysteries unsolved. If this operation fails to produce results, it's hard to imagine what more could be done, the source acknowledged. This is the culminating investigation attempt. For viewers of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, the operation promises the most dramatic and consequential content in the show's history. What Brandon has authorized is what fans have wanted from the beginning, actually going underground to see what's there, the source stated. This is the moment the entire show has been building toward. What Brandon Fugal authorized the team to do next at Skinwalker Ranch is shocking because it represents abandonment of caution in favor of confronting the mystery directly, regardless of risks or consequences, a decision that will either answer the ranch's greatest questions or prove that some mysteries resist all attempts at solution.